Hi, what if there's a mathematics of relationships? And what if you understood the mathematics of relationships, you changed your behavior and your happiness would increase? Now, I saw this fascinating video the other day on game theory and the prisoner's dilemma. Now, game theory is essentially a field of mathematics where people look at what happens in a particular game, or if there's a certain thing that occurs in a particular game, and what happens when one person does something, another person does something else. So there's a famous game called the Prisoner's Dilemma, where you have two people locked in a relationship or locked in a dynamic, and what happens when one person behaves in one particular way, and what is the appropriate response of the other person in order to get the best outcomes. So mathematicians created game theory in the 1950s in order to understand the Cold War. Because when you've got two belligerents, or two people locked in a dynamic, or two countries locked in a dynamic, a negative outcome would mean that people get annihilated and the Earth gets involved in a catastrophic nuclear war. So that's not a good way of dealing with things. So mathematicians came up with game theory in order to understand how to behave appropriately and avoid global nuclear annihilation. And they looked at what happens when you have one party in the dynamic do something nice, do something neutral, or do something nasty. And what's the appropriate response? Now, the mathematician driving the research asked 20 other mathematicians or groups of mathematicians to submit what they thought would be the best mathematical theory in order to get the maximum benefit from the relationship, or the maximum benefit from the dynamic, or what they thought was the best way to avoid catastrophic annihilation. And then they would do multiple iterations of a particular response. So if one person in the dynamic does something nice, what's the best thing for the other person to do? If one entity in the dynamic does something nasty, what's the best thing for the other person to do? And then if one person does something neutral, what's the best thing for them to do? Now, I'll spare you all the details, but the best way of maximizing the benefit for both people in the relationship was the theory described as tit for tat, but generous tit for tat. So what tit for tat basically says is if you do something nice to me, I do something nice to you. If you do something nasty to me, I'm probably going to do something nasty to you, but both people need to go back to and err on the side of being nice and generous. So if you're generous and nice, even if your partner does something negative, you'll go back to being generous and nice, and then people have a tendency to do nice things to people who are doing nice things to us. So that's the theory. That's a mathematical theory that was described as being tit for generous, nice, tit for tat, that maximizes the benefit for both people in the relationship. Now, the worst theory was nasty, not generous. As in, one person does something nice to you, you do something nice to them. But as soon as one person does something nice to you and you do something nice to them, but as soon as they do something nasty to you, you do something nasty to them and you stay nasty and keep giving them lots and lots and lots and lots of nasty. Now, it's really interesting in that when I was listening to this video, when I was watching this, I realized that that's what my clients do all the time. At the beginning of the relationship, both people are driven by desire maximization. At the beginning of a relationship, the relationship's driven by desire maximization. People are doing something nice. People are trying to be nice. They're trying to be generous. They're not bringing up the past all the time because there is no past. If your partner inadvertently does something you don't want, as in something nasty, you'll probably do something nasty to them, but you're erring on the side of being generous and nice. And that's what people do at the beginning of the relationship, which maximizes the desire in the relationship and it maximizes that both people getting what they want. But over a period of years, couples end up slipping from generous, nice, tit for tat to nasty, not generous. Your partner does something nasty to you, so you do something nasty to them, and you stay nasty. Or if one person gets to a very low level of desire in a relationship, they don't want to do anything nice to their partner. And even if their partner does something nice in return, they'll respond with neutral. So the mathematics of the relationship gets flipped, or the strategies that people apply, the behavioral strategies that people apply to their relationship gets flipped when desire crashes in the relationship or desire ebbs away. Now, what I try and do with all of my clients is literally flip the mathematics of the relationship. What I'm trying to do is get them going back to being generous, being nice, and doing tit for tat. So your partner does something nice to you, you do something nice to them, and you're nice. If your partner does something you don't like, you let it go, and you make sure you don't bring up the past all the time. And then if that's the case, you end up going back to maximizing the benefit of the relationship. Now, I try and do that in 3 or 4 sessions. I try and get my clients doing that in 6 to 8 weeks. And it happens to work extremely well. So it was fascinating watching this video on game theory, but it works in relationships. So if you are having a challenging relationship, you need to go back to being generous and nice. And if your partner's something you don't like, or you need to work through that together and move on and go back to both you being generous and nice. And if both of you do that, you can have the relationship that you want. So I hope this has helped. Please like and subscribe to the channel. I look forward to making more quality content for you shortly. Thanks so much for listening, and bye for now.